Hello, let's have a look at day 5 of Ages and Timelines. In advance of today's lesson, you're going to want just a big piece of chart paper with a title on it, Subtraction Strategies, and leave that blank to start filling in during your mini lesson. Number strip, which is Appendix D, you're going to need copies of that for the kids, and you should make one of these in advance so that you have it ready for to work with in front of the class. And then I want you to also note that there is going to be homework tonight. We're not giving a lot of homework during this unit, but tonight the homework is for the kids to interview family members and find out what year they were born. So plan to leave time to explain this homework assignment to the kids and to share it on Seesaw so that parents understand what the task is. The book doesn't give a recording sheet for this. You may want to create one for your kids that it has the assignment written on it, depending on what you think your kids will need. And we can work together to prepare that if you'd like. Okay, so the bulk of today's lesson is a subtraction string. If you've ever seen or heard me talk about the book Number Talks, this is the same idea. You're going to teach strategies, subtraction strategies, through a series of leading problems. And so the strategies are going to be generated by the kids themselves, but you're going to be leading them down that path through problems that push them to use those strategies, and then by asking them to talk about it. So I'll talk you through this. Some things to consider is that what you should be saying is posing the problem. First one is 82 minus 6. And then you say thumbs up when you have an answer. Ask the kids not to stick their hand in the air, not to raise their hand when they know what the answer is, but to give like a subtle, quiet thumbs up. They can put their their hand on their desk or on their chest, hold it up to their chest when they have an answer with a thumb up. And then if they get that very quickly, they can still think, and if they come up with a second strategy to get the answer, they can then show a second finger. They can then show their pointer finger or a third finger or fourth finger, still holding their hand close to them on their chest or on their desk so it's not distracting other kids. This will give everyone in the room time to think of an answer while other kids are thinking of multiple ways to get their answer. Once you have given everyone enough time to think, you can ask, who wants to share how you got your answer? When someone shares an answer, you ask, does everyone agree? If not, get everyone's possible answers. If there's more than one answer in the room, you want to write them all down. And then you want them to show their strategies. When someone shows their strategies, give someone who got a different answer a chance to change their mind, agree or disagree. And then once everyone agrees what the answer is, then you want to ask, does anyone have a way with fewer steps? And you can go ahead and say, you know, that first answer was right, and that was a great strategy, but it took a lot of steps, and it was a lot of numbers to keep track of. Does anyone have a way with fewer steps? So validating the right answer, but then pushing towards using fewer steps and being efficient. Okay, so 82 minus 6. Sounds good. So someone raises their hand and says they counted backwards. 82, and then they went back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Fair enough. For this, they should get the answer 76. And even though it takes some time, it can be handy to write all of those numbers in, to write that this is 81 and 80 and 79 and 78 and 77. They can hold on to their chairs while you sit and do that. And then you ask the question, does anyone have a way to do it with fewer steps? And maybe someone says, well, I jumped back 2 to get to 80, and then 4 more to get to 76 from 80. And that can work you towards using more efficient strategies. Typically, and I think we've all found this, if someone says, well, I just went back 6, what they really meant is that they went back by 1 6 times. So try and get them to verbalize that. If someone says, I just subtracted 6, ask them, well, what did you do in your head when you subtracted by 6? And most likely they'll say, I said 81, 80, 79, 78, 77, 76. So try and get them to verbalize that and really push them towards making these jumps is more efficient. The next problem we get to is 64 minus 59. So this one's really interesting because it is like a different kind of problem. So put up 64 minus 59, write this one up on the board, say, good job, everyone, and then put this one up and give them a second to think about it. Give them the same prompt that they put their thumb up instead of raising their hand, and try and come up with multiple strategies if they got their first one quickly. So, great, 64 minus 59. Hopefully what you're going to get is kids counting up. They're going to start at 59, jump to 60, and then maybe jump 4 more to get to 64, and then they found that the difference was this much, that the distant difference between those was 5. So the answer to this is, in fact, 5. And they may not even notice the difference in strategy here, that before they were counting backwards 6, and here they were counting up from the lower number to the higher number to get the difference between them. That's okay. Have them sort of work through this and get to their answer before you necessarily have to bring it to their attention. You may want to start mentioning these terms as they're working. Say, oh, I see you used a landmark. You jumped to 60. Or I see you were counting up. Or here you were counting back. Use those terms, but don't necessarily ask about why yet. Our third problem is another counting back problem. 56 minus 8. So if you did have kids who were counting back by ones, call on them and say specifically, can you think of a quicker way to do this by making bigger jumps? Push kids to making that minus 6 and then minus 2 more jump to get to 50 and then to get to 48. See if you can target the kids who had a hard time doing that at first and get them to try that, encourage them to do that. At around this point in the number string, or whenever it feels appropriate with your group, you need to pose the question about the difference between going back and forth. Turn to the class and say, I have a question. It seems like sometimes we're going forward adding, and other times we're going backwards. Why do you think this is? Turn to the person next to you and talk about it. Why are we switching our strategies? In which cases are we going to use one, and which cases are we going to use other? And have them partner up and talk about it. Have them share their ideas. Go through the rest of the problems. From here, having them talk about which strategy they used and possibly why that is. Then, hopefully, you're going to start having the discussion that when the numbers are really close together, you're going to count up from the lower number. But when they're really far apart, you're going to count backwards. Hopefully this is the strategy they're going to come to. You take out your chart paper that says subtraction strategies, and you start to record some of the notes that kids are sharing. This is the instructional part of the lesson. This is where you're actually teaching the kids something. So feel free to stick on this for as long as is appropriate, but make sure you're getting the kids to share their input, because they're the ones creating this mathematical idea. And that part is really important. All right, next part of this lesson is to give the homework assignment. The homework assignment is for the kids to go home and find out what year a bunch of people in their family were born. So the book doesn't give any template for this, any worksheet, but we might want to write one up and make copies of it just so that the kids have a standardized piece of paper to bring home that says the directions in writing. So some things that this might say is list at least 4 family members. I just came up with at least 4. I don't know what you think would be appropriate. Maybe at least 3, but letting them know that it doesn't have to be someone who lives in their home. If they have a grandparent or a cousin somewhere, that they can use that person as well. Could also, if you want to make the rule that it can be a pet or that it can't be a pet, you might want to be explicit about that. And then the directions are find out and record what year they were born. Then when you share this back with parents, I would recommend posting this on Seesaw as well so that parents know what to do when they're answering these questions. Explicitly say that they're not looking for the ages of these people, but just the year that they're born. That in class you're going to work on figuring out ages. Here you're just recording their birth year. Now, another option here is if you don't want to send home a piece of paper, you could actually post the assignment on Seesaw and then have the families respond to it as homework on Seesaw. I think you guys have done this before where the parents had to do a task on Seesaw. They had to actually post their responses as a comment to the assignment. So you could even, if you choose to do that, have it all be online where the parents just have to type in the family members with the 8 years that they were born onto the computer, and then the kids would have access to that in class the next day. The last part of today's lesson is to create the timelines. So if you don't get to this today, that's fine. Or if the kids get started and don't finish, that's also totally fine because they're going to keep working with this tomorrow. But you will show them the timeline that you created that has the decades already placed on it. Then you'll create a little tab that says 2018 and ask the kids where that would go, and hopefully they'll see this as 2010 and be able to count, and you together would place a little tab here that says 2018. Then once you have that sample up on the board with the decades placed at the differences between each 10 and then this year's tab placed on there, you can give them their copy of the sheet and let them start cutting it out. You can explain at some point that their task, once they've cut this out and taped it together, and you'll of course do your second grade teacher job of explaining which parts to cut and which parts to tape, and what to write on and what not to write on and what not to cut, that once they put that together, their task will be to write their name on and place that on the year they were born. So I did that on mine. I wrote both a name and the year. I wrote 2009, but they'll be born 2009 or 2010 mostly, I believe. So just as to simplify things, I put the decades on the bottom of the timeline, and I put the person on the top of the timeline. That's a preference, just sort of a suggestion for ease of use. That is the whole lesson for day 5. And again, this will probably extend into day 6, but with the additional task added on. So easy peasy. See you next time.